Hello and welcome to Unspun Live, the Herald's politics podcast. My name is Andrew Learmonth, political editor of the paper, and it is budget day. Happy budget day to you. I am here in the concrete bunker that is the Herald's office in the Scottish Parliament. Rachel Reeves has not long sat down. She set out her tax and spending plans for the year, but one of the big stories from today's budget was the fact that the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, accidentally, leaked their forecasts for the year before she stood up to deliver her speech. Normally, the convention is those forecasts come out after she sat down. So it kind of sent Westminster, the markets, into a bit of a tizzy. I caught up with Ian McConnell, the Herald's business editor, to talk about the budget, and we started off by talking about the OBR and what that means and just how serious that leak is.
Yeah, it was certainly a huge surprise. These things are kind of normally like clockwork. The OBR report, Economic and Fiscal Outlook, is published afterwards, kind of thing. As are the Treasury documents and so on. And on this occasion, as you say, I think it obviously came out sort of the OBR report came out well in advance to. Of the Chancellor, getting to her feet. So, I think there was obviously some kind of reaction in the City of London to trading floors and so on. So, it certainly did cause quite the stir, to put it very mildly indeed.
Yeah, but how serious is something like this in terms of the city, what it does to the finances?
Yeah, I guess obviously the document or what is contained in a budget is could potentially move financial markets to some degree or another, depending on what it is and how much there is in it. Obviously the trust budget was the classic, which moved financial markets dramatically back in 2022. Obviously that just kind of happened as it came on that occasion. But so I think obviously there are very clear arrangements for these things being published to ensure that everything is orderly and so on, and that the budget speech is seen by people as live, and then the kind of details and so on are kind of published afterwards, kind of thing. Yeah.
I suppose the other part of this as well is that obviously normally before the budget you get a lot of kite flying. You get a lot of ministers and sources briefing papers saying we might do this, but it seems to have ratcheted up quite a lot ahead of this budget. And of course, we had the Chancellor herself standing inside the press room at number 9 Downing Street, delivering a scene-setter speech in which she suggested that income taxes were going to go up. In the end, income taxes haven't gone up, but she has decided to freeze the thresholds.
Yes, that is a very big move. It was a method used by Rishi Sunak's spring 2021 budget. He sort of put in this long freeze on income tax thresholds, which ran to 2025-26. It was then extended for 2 years out to April 2028 by Jeremy Hunt in the autumn of 2022. So that is, especially given inflation around that time, that was a huge tax take, because obviously people's pay rises like broadly in line with the cost of living, sometimes less, sometimes more, but people are paying more and more tax on as their pay rises in kind of nominal terms without and not while it's not rising in real terms, So I think that is obviously a huge measure. I think on this occasion, I think the numbers are by in 2028-29 fiscal year, it brings in £3.365 billion extra, and the following fiscal year, 29-30, it brings in £7.78 billion extra. That's from the freezing the thresholds for income tax and national insurance. There's an additional 615 million in 2029-30 from the kind of employers' secondary contribution threshold fees as well. So so it is a huge measure. Obviously not quite as big as the NI move was 25 billion that brought in last year, but 7.78 billion off that measure, plus that 615 million, amounts to a big amount. And I think it's something that people don't notice as much as a rise in the headline rate. Obviously there was a manifesto pledge in the headline rate, so there's a great kind of deal of, are they going to break the manifesto pledge? In the end, she kind of resorted, I guess, to what was a Tory tactic, that sort of worked for them for many years in terms of, bringing in a massive increased tax take.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. She said in her speech that she hadn't broken any manifesto commitment, but I think for a lot of workers, then they may not feel the same way when they see that they're being dragged into that higher tax rate,
Yeah, I guess it's the spirit versus the wording of it. Isn't it? Always with these things, yeah. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Because we learned that the Chancellor's the fiscal headroom is around sort of, what do we mean when we talk about fiscal headroom? When we say it's £22 billion, what are we talking about there?
Yeah, I mean, it's just how much margin there is to kind of play with within the the kind of fiscal rules. It obviously did increase to that 22 billion plus figure. That was something that seemed to go down quite well with financial markets. They obviously prefer a bigger to a smaller margin, and there'd been so much talk beforehand of sort of dramatic black holes having opened up with the cut in the productivity growth forecast from the OBR, which certainly was a very big deal in terms of affecting the growth forecasts and so on. It was interesting to see the Chancellor blame Brexit in that, albeit quite briefly. There'd been a lot of sort of stuff in the run up to the budget, albeit a few weeks ago, that they would start pointing the finger at Brexit. Obviously, Brexit has been a huge hit to the economy and to tax revenues and to living standards, but it's not one that's frequently mentioned or at length.
In terms of other sort of big measures here, there was the EV mileage tax, which I think is going to be quite an interesting one. So 3p a mile for electric cars, which is quite interesting. Other reforms to motoring tax, alcohol duty there. I think your understanding was maybe the sector thought they were going to get a bit of a breather this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a perception last year. I think they felt kind of aggrieved because there was the kind of talk from Sir Keir Starmer of backing them to the hilt kind of thing, and then duty rose. I think they've been hoping for a freeze this time round. So I think that that is certainly kind of an issue for the Scotch whisky sector there. Yeah. I mean, the other big revenue raising measure was the salary sacrifice and pensions. Obviously, the main pension reliefs sort of remain in terms of contributions being the relief there, but the salary sacrifices obviously was a specific form of kind of relief in addition to that, which the Chancellor obviously highlighted numbers showing that this was growing sort of dramatically. There's been a cap put in place on that now, but I think that measure, it doesn't take effect for a little while to allow employers to adjust and so on. But that one brings in £4.845 billion in 29-30. So that's another big one, there. Likewise, I think the dividend income tax rise, that goes up to that brings in £1.325 billion in 29-30 fiscal year. So yeah, these are quite big ones. The savings ones, I think about £500 million, kind of out at 28-29, 525 million. So so that's I guess that's the kind of big measures there.
And changes to ISAs as well. ISAs to be capped at £12,000. Who benefits from this? Is this something that's going to benefit ordinary savers, or is this something which is going to benefit the businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll probably ultimately benefit the Treasury to some extent, obviously as well, just because people who have that amount of sort of cash savings in a year won't be able to shield that unless if they're putting it into cash kind of thing. So it's all the way the portions have been changed. It's kind of it's I think it's aimed at encouraging more investment in equities and so on. That's been something that has been a kind of quite a strong narrative from, I think, the government over the piece. This idea of supporting UK companies and sort of boosting the economy by investing in them rather than sort of keeping money in cash and so on. So obviously the ISA alliance is much, sort of a few years ago, it kind of rose dramatically, or quite a number of years ago now, and it, in the past was much lower kind of thing. So I think 12,000 on the cash element is like a lot higher than, when it was floated, last time round and didn't happen. I think there was talk of it being cut even further kind of thing, but it's obviously a sizable cut. But it's kind of interesting the way they have moved to just like bring more savings income into tax, the rise in the tax and dividends and sort of cash savings, which outside the ISA wrapper kind of thing.
In terms of you're the business editor of the paper, what has been the business reaction to the budget? How are businesses? Are they sort of positive, negative, neither?
Yeah, I think it's been fairly mixed. There's been some fairly dramatic negative comment as there often is kind of thing. There's some people maybe do feel it could have been worse, I guess. There was obviously a big hit to businesses last time round with the national insurance rise a year ago. So the North Sea reaction is is kind of. It doesn't look positive certainly, but it does. I think it's generally mixed. I mean, it was obviously a budget that had to raise a lot of money. It, obviously increased spending a lot in terms of the child poverty measures as well, which kind of fully funded or whatever.
Yeah, so this is kind of one of the big measures in the budget, which is that the Chancellor is going to scrap the two-child cap, which was brought in by George Osborne, and sort of came into force in 2017. This is something that she's come under a lot of pressure from her backbenchers to get rid of. It basically meant that if you had more than two children, you would not receive certain benefits for a third child, unless that third child was conceived through rape, which is where the rape clause comes from. So Rachel Reeves stood up in the chamber today and said that she was going to get rid of that and then take the rape clause, the so-called rape clause, off the books. That has been hugely welcomed, I think, by charities up here in Scotland, not least all of those who sort of backed our campaign earlier this year to do something to scrap the cap. But the question now is for the Scottish Government is what are they going to do with this money? What are they going to do with the money? Because the Scottish Government were going to mitigate the cap and had 155 million set aside to do that. They now no longer need to do that because Rachel Reeves is going to do it from April. So where's that money going to go? Is that money going to stick to tackling child poverty? Is it going to go somewhere else? Will the Scottish Government bank that saving? The Scottish Government, who obviously have their own black hole in the finances, So the interesting questions for them, I think. Anything else we should talk about? Anything else we need to sort of quickly mention here? I think we've.
Yeah. I mean, I think that covers most of the ground, I guess. But I mean, there was probably a bit of a sense that, given how dramatic the kind of problem for the Chancellor had been, or was kind of thing in terms of meeting the fiscal rules, it did seem to kind of pass off a bit more sort of peacefully and less dramatically than might have been imagined. That said, there are some big sort of revenue raising measures in there, and it remains to be seen in coming days how people react to those kind of thing. A lot of detail in there as well. So.
Yeah. Ian McConnell, the Herald's business editor there. Right, so last week was Scottish Politician of the Year, the Herald's flagship awards event in association with Scottish Power. My colleague Hannah Brown was there. Here's her video behind the scenes.
On the podcast now, we are taking you inside Preston Fieldhouse in Edinburgh, where the Scottish Politician of the Year Awards 2025 delivered big wins, emotional moments, and a few surprises along the way. Before the announcements, we grabbed a few quick chats with guests about what they were most looking forward to.
Brian Whittle, the Conservative MSP for the South of Scotland. So Brian, what are you looking forward to tonight?
Well, obviously the haggis bonbons. It's one of the main reasons that I turn up tonight, obviously. To be honest, I love coming along here because we get to meet everybody in the one place at the one time. And lots of people that I only see once a year come along tonight. But it's always a really good night. I think we don't take ourselves too seriously, hopefully, and just a way to relax with colleagues that we don't normally get.
So we're joined by Brian Taylor, who's one of the judges this evening, the former political editor of the BBC and Herald columnist. And Brian, what does this event mean to you this evening?
This event is, I think, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, events in Scotland's social and political calendar, you know, at an intersection of the two. I've been coming to this event since it first started, just after the creation, or the recreation, the reconvening of the Scottish Parliament. I've been a judge from the outset under a succession of glorious and wonderful Herald editors, and it's had its ups. It's had one or two little shaky moments down the years, but it is first of all, it's survived, but it's done more than that. It's thrived. It is absolutely loved and adored and respected and admired by all the people who come from the worlds of business, politics, the wicked media. All of them come to this event, and I think it has a tremendous, and rightly, a tremendous reputation.
The headline award, Scottish Politician of the Year, went to First Minister John Swinney. Judges praised his turnaround of his party after a turbulent spell and his diplomatic push on US whisky tariffs, including his famous meeting in the Oval Office. On stage, he called it the privilege of his life to serve the people of Scotland and paid a moving tribute to his wife, linking his chosen charity, the MS Society, to her support over the years.
To the Herald and to the judges, thank you very much for this award. It is very much appreciated. As everybody will realise, I didn't quite expect to be doing what I'm doing today, but I'm doing it happily and energetically and enthusiastically. It is the privilege of my life to serve the people of Scotland as First Minister and to do all that I can to improve the lives of the people of Scotland, which is what I strive to do every single day. As one of the nominees, and I share this pleasure with my Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes and with Jackie Bailey, the ability to share the proceeds of the charitable giving tonight with charities that are dear to our heart. And you will understand that my choice of the MS Society in Scotland is immensely and deeply close to my heart, because I am only able to do what I do as First Minister because of the sacrifices of my absolutely darling and courageous wife Elizabeth, and I'm glad I have the privilege to, in some small way, make a contribution to the work of the MS Society in Scotland as a consequence.
Elsewhere, it was a strong night for Kate Forbes, who picked up two major awards, Politics and Business and the Green Champion Award for her influence on the government's environmental and energy strategy. Another award, Best Scot at Westminster, was won by MP Brian Leishman for his strong stance on welfare reform and the future of Grangemouth. Michael Mara was named Community MSP of the Year for his work on the Dundee University financial crisis. Committee MSP of the Year went to Douglas Ross and the Education Committee for their scrutiny of university governance.
My fellow committee members and our clerks who do a great job. You heard some of the discussions that we've had, be it the Principal of Edinburgh University, Dundee University. We've done some work on the SPA Higher History, and I want to mention those couple of points because a lot of these issues come from the print media. If it hadn't been for the Herald and their educational reporters focusing on the SPA higher history shambles of 2004, the Education Committee wouldn't have looked at it. Say for those who are elected next year, value the committees. We don't have a revising chamber, therefore they are more important than ever to hold government to account and to get to the bottom of some of the serious challenges that are affecting our country and issues such as education, health, finance. So really do nurture these committees. They can have and do have an important role, and thank you very much for this award tonight.
Debater of the Year award went to Eleanor Witham for her standout contribution to the assisted dying debate, a debate judges called one of the most compelling in years. The One to Watch award went to Mary McCallan, recognised for her growing influence in government. In the public sphere, Campaigner of the Year went to For Women Scotland and their landmark Supreme Court victory on the definition of sex in the Equality Act. Long-serving councillor Willie Scobie took home Local Politician of the Year, recognised for nearly 4 decades supporting vulnerable communities. And rounding off the night, the Lifetime Achievement Award went to Lord George Robertson, honoured for his decades of service in UK governance and on the international stage. His speech was full of humour and reflection and recalled everything from conflicts abroad to the pride he has in his family home. The night closed off with warm words from Scottish Power's Keith Anderson, celebrating dedication shown across Scotland's political landscape. A packed room, passionate speeches, and a real sense of Scotland's political energy heading into 2026, the election year. That's your roundup from this year's Scottish Politician of the Year Awards.
And there at Prestonfield's House for the Scottish Politician of the Year in association with Scottish Power. Right, that's it for this week. Thanks very much for listening. If you've enjoyed that, please subscribe. Please tell your friends. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much. Goodbye.